Hello folks, it's that time of year again. The end. And that means it's time for Kyle's annual indie game recap for 2024, because this is somehow the 4th year that I've been doing this. We're not going to linger on it. Now, I should disclose that this year I've played less indie games than I usually do, and because, I don't know, things happen, I've ended up playing a lot more AAA games this year. Those Assassin's Creed games, they have a hell of a lot of time, so I just haven't played as much indie games. But I still have played a few, so it's my privilege to talk about them and maybe get you to play some more indie games as well, because everybody should play more indie games. I will continue to die on this hill every single year. So if this is your first time here, which statistically it probably is, then the basic idea is I'm just going to sit here and chat about some games I played this year. There's no script or anything. We're just going to vibe, we're just going to chill, we're just going to have a lovely time talking about some indie games that you should play. Also, it's the middle of the holidays as I record this, so if I seem a bit low on energy, that's why I'm in kind of holiday mode right now, but that's fine, probably. Alright, so our first game is a game called Return to Grace, which is a walking sim. That title of genre has become a bit of an insult, but it's also very descriptive. It's a game where you walk around and sort of have a story happen while you walk around and solve some simple puzzles. The basic idea of Return to Grace is that you play as this astronaut-type lady who has come to this planet to find an artificial intelligence called Grace, who once upon a time was sort of the guardian and ruler sort of humanity, more of a guide, of an oracle type figure. The game has very much religious subtext, where we're talking about artificial intelligence, but we're also talking about God and our relationship to God, so that's a sort of meta layer to it. But the surface level is perfectly entertaining as well, because as you explore this facility, you uncover certain personality aspects of Grace, who has been shut down and fragmented, and these different fragments represent different aspects of her personality, and they talk to each other, and that's sort of the main drive of the story, is exploring with these little AI things on your wrist. It's a very nice looking game. It's not super long. It's a classic walking sim. If you like walking sims, you'll probably like this one. Next up, we have the game which I'm going to super struggle to pronounce every single time. It's Lil Gator Game. Lil. It's not something you can do with a Scottish accent, so I'm just going to call it Little Gator Game. There we go. Little Gator Game is sort of a Legend of Zelda pastiche, more the sort of 3D ones. The basic idea is you play as a little alligator, a little gator as it were, and you play a game. How do I describe it? You fight cardboard. You fight a bunch of cardboard, right? It's a game within a game. You play as this No, he's not a crocodile. He's an alligator, who you are playing like a fictional sort of D&D thing in this park and having fun in that sort of sense. So it's all very meta to it. But it's a very cute game. It's a very classically indie game. That's my usual catchphrase on these, I think. And it has a sort of sub-through line of embracing your inner child and letting your imagination kind of guide your adventure and that sort of thing. Not letting adult cynicism get you down too much, which I think is an important message to get to sometimes. And again, it's not super long. It's a brisk, I want to say 5 hours maximum if you're being completionist. But it's fun and it's well worth your time, and I would recommend it, obviously. That's why it's on this list. Alright, next up I have another walking sim, because it's kind of an indie cliche at this point. The walking sims, that's what all indie games are. It's not true, but they do make good ones sometimes as well, okay? It's not all Dear Esther, which is a game I hate, but that's a story for another time. But this one is called Open Roads. It's by Open Roads team, but it was published by Annapurna, who do a lot of artsy video game types. That's kind of what I mainly associate Annapurna with. But Open Roads, it's sort of a blend of a walking sim and a visual novel, and it's mainly driven by an incredibly strong cast. It's about a mum and her daughter going on this little adventure to find out who their grandmother was, and they learn that she had this entire other separate life that they didn't know about. The daughter's grandmother, the mother's mother. That's how family trees work, you get it. But yeah, so the whole game is walking around, exploring stuff, punctuated by these sort of graphic novel scenes of these two characters talking, and the entire game is just these two characters and this bond between mother and daughter. But the important part is the mother is voiced by Kerry Russell and the daughter is voiced by Caitlin Denver, who are both, actors, and they're both very good in it. They both carry a lot of this game. It's good. It's just exploring this relationship in a very in-depth way, and again, it's not super long. It's maybe 2 hours. So I think this one is worth your time. If you're into this sort of game, which not everyone is, but with such a short time commitment, just give it a go. Why not? Next up we have another Crab's Treasure, which is Souls-like, where you play as a crab. Alright, so a few years ago, I think on the first time I did this, I featured Going Under, which was a sort of Hades pastiche, except it was about sort of being an intern in this it's hard to explain. Go watch that video where I talked about it the first time. But that was made by a company called Aggro Crab, and this is their newest game where they were taking on the Souls-like genre, and you know what? I think they did a pretty damn good job, all things considered. I'm still relatively new to the Souls-like genre. I hate to say it, but I did try going back to play Dark Souls, and I just couldn't get into it. I'm sorry. But that doesn't mean I'm against this genre as a whole. I do like some games, and this is definitely on the, I want to say Souls-light is the sort of genre name for it, where it has some Souls-like elements, but it's not total. But I think that the changes that it does make would make it a good sort of baby's first Souls-like game. Mainly, it doesn't have a stamina meter, which means you don't have to worry about preserving your stamina, you can just go all in. It has a lot of options that are just if you just want to give up and do it, get through something, you can. There's a setting in the accessibility features to give the main character a Glock that just one-hits every single enemy, which is, it's funny. It's both funny and useful if you're just screw this, I just want to progress through the story, just pull out the gun and shoot him. It's not something you really should play through the whole game with, because then you're defying the point. But if you're stuck on a boss for 2 hours and you're I don't want to do this anymore, you can just hit the screw you button, which is in its own way very satisfying. But it also has a good story because, as we all know deep in our hearts, the real villain of the story was capitalism all along. And sometimes that's just the way it is, isn't it? Next up is one I won't spend too long on because I've already made a whole video about it, but it's Chants of Sennaar, which is a language-based puzzle game, and it's amazing. It would be my game of the year if it came out this year, but unfortunately it didn't. I came to it a year late. But it's still a phenomenal game. It's up there in my growing list of indie games that I think everyone should play. It's that good. It's got a great art style, it's got a great story, it's got one of the most ingenious puzzle mechanics I've ever seen in a game. I absolutely love this game. I think everyone should, if you take anything away from this video, it's go play Chants of Sennaar. And obviously I did a video getting much more in-depth into my sort of interpretation of the story and how that sort of side of things. I don't want to spoil too much in this video, but if you're interested you can go click up here to watch that one. Okay, this is probably the smallest game on this list. Not small as in the size of the game, but small as in how many people have played it. I want to say this game, I played it on Xbox, and it has 200 players registered on True Achievements. That's nothing. That's less views than this video will probably get. Unless it doesn't, in which case this will be a very embarrassing thing to include in the video, so make this video get more than 200 views, please. But anyway, this is a game called Togges? Togges? That's how it's spelled. I think it's pronounced Togges. Whatever, it's a game where you play as a Roomba and you spawn blocks. It's kind of hard to describe, but the main mechanic is, it's sort of exploring around these open worlds, and your main mechanic is you drop these things called Togges that sort of have different attributes. It's kind of like lemmings, or not lemmings, Pikmin, where you have a little things that can follow you around, except the Togges, they can't move, they're just blocks, but you can use them to stack up and traverse on things or create power lines and this sort of thing. It's a mechanic that's kind of complicated to get your head around at first, but once you get it, it kind of clicks and makes sense. And I want to say this game was made by one guy, so that's pretty impressive. My main problem with it, and it's the only game on any of these lists that I haven't finished because it's broken. The final boss doesn't work, many of the achievements are glitched, many of the collection things you have to get are not, working. Which is not ideal, but it's a risk you take with these kind of small one-man dev games, which is, it's one guy. If it's one guy in a game that hardly anyone has played, so glitches are just bound to slip through the net, and that's fine. Except it made my gamer score uneven because the achievements don't have even gamer score. But that's a problem that's going to bug me specifically for the rest of my life, unless one day it gets fixed. Maybe we'll see. I think the guy's already working on his next game though, so tough luck for me, I guess. But beyond that, it's still an interesting concept for a game, and I enjoyed my time with it, even if I ended on a sour note. And somehow we're already at the last one. I think this video is going to be half as long as last year's, but that's just how it is. But it's Dungeons of Hinterberg, which is a dungeon crawler, I suppose. Dungeon crawler is a kind of vague term, but the basic idea is in the Hinterbergs, there is a bunch of weird magical dungeons that have opened up, these magic portals that when you walk through, you go through and fight monsters with swords, but it's all set in the modern day. It's the modern day, but magic somehow exists, and you have to go through it, and going through these dungeons is like a tourist destination. There's a lot of different levels to the story going on here, but overall, it's a hack and slash game with some puzzle adventure elements. And it's pretty good. I had a fun time playing it. There's a whole subset about, like, making friends in the local town, and they'll sort of, there's a mechanical level to it, but also just exploring these characters and their stories. That stuff is all interesting. It's a good game. It's probably the longest game on this list that you can really, like, sink your teeth into as a game. It's not super complicated mechanically, but it gets more in-depth as you get further into it, which is a good way to do things. And it has a very cool art style. It's all sort of cel-shaded, which makes it look very nice. And it's a good game. It's a good, solid video game in a more sort of classical video game way. And wouldn't you know it, not to spoil the story too much, but the real villain was capitalism all along. So, that's something, isn't it? And unfortunately, that's the majority of the indie games that I played this year. Really cutting down on my creds as a cool hip game critic. I'm sorry, but I played a lot of very long games this year. I played both of the Ace Attorney remakes that came out. Those are like 100 hours per. I played Star Wars Outlaws, which unfortunately is still my game of the year. I'm very sorry. Played all of those Assassin's Creed games. I've just been playing a lot of really big games that ape a lot of your time this year, which haven't left a lot of space for indie games, but I will hopefully do better next year, but starting off next year, probably not so much, because I have to go through all of the RPG-era Assassin's Creed games, which are gigantic, humongous, so we'll see. And there's a lot of indie games that came out this year that I probably won't get around to until next year, where they will not be in contention for Game of the Year, like Chants of Sennaar, so, that's just the way it is. I'm very sorry, I'm very slow, that's always been my way. But all that's left to be said is thank you very much for watching, and thank you to my wonderful patrons for your continued support. It's been a heck of a year, that's for sure. My subscribers have nearly tripled this year from a single video alone, which isn't necessarily the one I would pick to be my success story, but you know what? Beggars can't be choosers, right? And it's still a good video. It's just not really representative of what I normally do. But onwards and upwards, and if you enjoy my videos and want to support me or want to see your name up here, then please consider signing up. It would mean a lot to me, as well as a like, comment, share, and subscribe, and ring the bell. If you want to see my previous indie game recaps, you can click up here for that playlist. Or to see that Chants of Sennaar video I was talking about, you can click down here. That one has been a little silent sleeper, but it's up over 1,000 views now, so that's pretty cool. And I will see you for more stuff next year.